Welcome to Sleepy Nights, a place where imagination and mystery intertwine, guiding you into a world of wonder and rest. As we journey together, let the soothing sound of the rain and the calming rhythm of my voice carry you closer to a peaceful slumber. Before we begin, take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel. Your support helps us continue creating these stories that ease your mind and lull you to sleep. Now, settle in, relax, and let your thoughts drift away. The Ivory Coast had always been a dream destination of mine, a land rich in culture, history, and unspoken mysteries. The air was heavy with the scent of rain-soaked earth, and as I arrived in a small remote village, a storm brewed on the horizon. Rainstorms in the Ivory Coast were not like the gentle showers I knew. They were alive, wild, furious torrents that danced with the rhythm of thunder and lightning. The locals didn't fear the rain, they revered it. But there was an unspoken caution in their eyes whenever I asked about the ceremonial practices tied to storms. I didn't come to unravel mysteries. I came for photographs and stories, chasing the ethereal beauty of the region. Yet, fate had other plans. That evening, as the rain battered the earth, I wandered the edges of the village. I had my camera in hand, but the storm had rendered it useless. The lens fogged, droplets clinging to its surface. I tucked it away, resigning myself to simply take in the moment. It was then that I saw it, a glint of gold and black peeking out from a cluster of banana leaves. Curiosity is a dangerous thing, but it drove me to step off the trail, the mud sucking at my boots. As I drew closer, I realized what I was looking at. A mask, half buried in the muck. It was beautiful, intricate. Its surface was carved with swirling patterns, painted in shades of obsidian and shimmering gold. The edges were adorned with beads that looked like they had been crafted from the bones of small animals. Something about it called to me. I held the mask in my hands, the rain washing the dirt from its surface. The weight of it felt unnatural, not heavy, but dense, as though it carried more than its physical form. Without thinking, I lifted it to my face. The second it touched my skin, the world changed. The roar of the storm was gone, replaced by an eerie silence. The rain was still falling, but upward. Each droplet defied gravity, surging into the sky and disappearing into the roiling black clouds. The forest was no longer a chaotic maze of greens and browns. It had become a monochrome landscape, shadows blending into shadows. And then I saw them. Figures, faint at first, began to emerge from the mist. They had no faces, no features, only the vaguest outlines of human form. Yet I knew they were watching me. I reached up to remove the mask, panic rising in my chest, but it wouldn't budge. The figures began to move. Their steps were silent, their forms fluid, like smoke curling in the wind. Each movement seemed deliberate, calculated, as if they were testing the boundaries of my fear. I stumbled backward, my hands clawing at the edges of the mask. The beads cut into my palms, but the pain was distant, muted. The world around me felt less solid with every passing moment. One of the figures stopped just a few feet away. Though it had no eyes, I could feel its gaze pierce through me, stripping away every layer of pretense, every shield I had built to protect myself. "Why are you here?" a voice whispered, though it came from nowhere and everywhere at once. "I don't know," I stammered. My voice sounded strange, as though it didn't belong to me. "I found the mask. I didn't mean to." "You wear what was not meant for you," the voice continued. "And now, you see what cannot be unseen." The figures began to circle me, their movements synchronized. Each step seemed to reverberate through the ground, shaking me to my core. "Please, let me go," I begged. A figure stepped forward, closer than the others. In its hands, it held a mask identical to the one I wore. "To remove the mask," the voice said, "you must offer something in return." The air grew colder, the reverse rain slicing against my skin like shards of ice. "What do you want?" I whispered. "Your voice, your shadow, your name. Choose." The weight of the words crushed me. My voice, my ability to speak, to scream, to sing. My shadow, the essence of my existence, the proof of my place in the world. My name, the very core of who I was. Tears streamed down my face beneath the mask, mingling with the cold rain. I don't know," I choked. The figures stilled, their forms tilting in unison as if waiting, as if taunting. Time stretched. The air grew thinner. The weight of the mask pressed harder against my skin, merging with me, consuming me. "I'll give you my name," I said finally, my voice trembling. The figures paused. The one holding the mask stepped closer, its outline shifting, flickering like a weak flame. "Then it is done," the voice said. The mask fell away, and the world snapped back into place. The rain fell normally, soaking through my clothes. The storm raged on, but it felt distant now, its power dulled. The forest was as it had been, alive, vibrant, chaotic. But something was missing. I couldn't remember who I was. My name, a simple string of syllables, the anchor of my identity, was gone. It left behind a hollow ache, a sense of something vital torn away. I stumbled back to the village, my limbs trembling, my mind racing. The locals stared at me as if they knew, as if they saw the invisible mark left on me by the mask. "Leave," one of them said quietly, avoiding my gaze. "You brought it back, didn't you? You can't stay." I wander now, nameless, voiceless in the deepest sense. The mask gave me a glimpse of a world beyond comprehension, but it took something I'll never regain. Sometimes I hear whispers in the rain, echoes of that voice, that place. And I wonder, not with fear, but with a strange longing. If I find the mask again, would I be brave enough to put it on? Or was that bravery, or foolishness, taken from me too? Some stories linger in the back of your mind like shadows, half-formed and elusive. You tell yourself they're just tales, figments of imagination meant to entertain or warn. But what if they aren't? In the forgotten corners of West Africa, they spoke of a place that didn't exist on any map, a market that appeared only when the heavens wept. A place where the ordinary became extraordinary, where the veil between the worlds of the living and the dead grew impossibly thin. I'd always dismissed it as folklore, one of many tales whispered around fires on dark nights. That was until I found myself walking alone on the rainy plains, with a storm gathering overhead and a mystery waiting to unfold. The rain had started as a drizzle, soft and harmless, pattering against the wide brim of my hat. I was traveling on foot, cutting across the plains on my way to a nearby village. The storm clouds rolled in swiftly, swallowing the late afternoon sun, and soon the downpour was relentless. The path ahead blurred under sheets of rain. I should have sought shelter, turned back perhaps, but something kept me moving forward. A strange pull, as though the storm itself wanted me to keep going. As I turned a corner, I saw it. The outline of stalls, faint and wavering in the rain, like a mirage. As I drew closer, the shapes became clearer. Colorful awnings, tables laden with wares, and figures moving about, their faces obscured by the shadows of their wide-brimmed hats and hoods. The air was heavy with a scent I couldn't place, a mix of damp earth, exotic spices, and something faintly metallic. The vendors were silent, their movements fluid as they arranged goods on their stalls. It wasn't until I stepped closer that they noticed me. "Welcome," a voice greeted, soft yet resonant, as though carried by the rain itself. The figure before me wore a long robe, its fabric shimmering with an otherworldly glow. I couldn't see their face beneath the hood, but their presence was magnetic, commanding. The stalls brimmed with strange items, rings that seemed to hum with energy, jars of shimmering liquid that reflected colors not found in any rainbow, and books whose pages whispered as they turned. Each object seemed alive, pulsing faintly, as though it had a heartbeat of its own. "Choose wisely," the vendor said, their voice like a melody woven into the rain. I wandered from stall to stall, marveling at the treasures. A small, intricately carved wooden box caught my eye. It was unassuming compared to the other wares, yet something about it called to me. "What is this?" I asked. "A memory," the vendor replied. "One not yet lived." The word sent a shiver down my spine. "How much?" The vendor tilted their head. "The cost is not in coin. Are you willing to trade?" I hesitated. "Trade what?" They didn't answer. Instead, they gestured to the storm around us. "The market does not open often. This is your chance." I should have walked away. Every instinct told me to leave, to turn back and never return. But curiosity is a dangerous thing, and the pull of the market was stronger than my fear. "I'll trade," I said, my voice barely audible over the rain. The vendor reached out, their hand cold as they placed the box in my palm. The moment I took it, the world shifted. The rain grew louder, deafening, and the figures in the market began to blur and fade. I turned, but the path I had walked was gone, replaced by an endless expanse of mist and shadow. The box grew warm in my hand. Against my better judgment, I opened it. Inside was a vision, a moment that hadn't yet come to pass. I saw myself, older and weathered, standing in a place I didn't recognize. My hands held something precious, something vital, but the scene was cut short by a shadow falling over me, a presence that filled me with dread. When I looked up, the market was gone. I was alone on the plains, the storm retreating as quickly as it had come. I returned to the village shaken but alive. I tried to forget the experience, to convince myself it was a dream conjured by exhaustion. But the box remained, a tangible reminder of the impossible. Over the years, I began to notice changes, small at first, then impossible to ignore. My reflection seemed sharper, more alert, as though it was watching me as much as I was watching it. My dreams grew vivid, filled with places I had never been, and faces I didn't know. And then there were the storms. Every time it rained, I felt the pull again, the distant hum of the market calling me back. I haven't returned, but I know that someday I will. The box remains unopened, its secret waiting to be fulfilled. If you ever find yourself on the rainy plains during a storm, and you see the faint outline of stalls in the distance, walk away. No matter how curious you are, no matter how strong the pull, resist it, because once you step into the spirit market, you're never truly free. The Kalahari Desert stretches endlessly, a vast golden sea of sand and sunburned earth. I had come here for solitude, seeking the kind of silence only the desert can offer. Days stretched into one another as I wandered, following the faint trails of the sand people and sleeping under a canopy of stars brighter than I'd ever imagined. But solitude, I would soon learn, is not the same as safety. It was the rains that changed everything. The locals had warned me. This was no time for wandering alone. They spoke of things that moved with the storms, whispers carried on the wind. They spoke about spirits, or creatures that came alive when the desert drank. I had laughed politely, brushing it off as folklore. But the laughter died quickly when I saw the fear in their eyes. It began with a faint, low rumble, like a distant growl of a waking predator. The horizon darkened, streaked with slate and ash, and the wind shifted, carrying the scent of damp earth and something else, something sharp and metallic, almost electric. Rainstorms in the desert are rare, and when they come, they're violent. The clouds churned above me, heavy and foreboding, and the first fat drops hit the sand with audible splats. Within moments, the skies opened, and the rain fell in sheets, pounding the earth. The heat of the day dissipated, replaced by a coolness that sank into my skin. I held my face to the sky, reveling in the relief from the relentless sun. But my joy was short-lived. It started as a shimmer in the periphery of my vision, thin, sinuous shapes weaving through the rain. I blinked, wiping water from my eyes, but the shapes didn't vanish. Instead, they grew clearer, more defined, moving with a grace that no trick of the light could explain. They were serpentine, their translucent bodies refracting the dim light of the storm like prisms. They moved with an unnatural elegance, slithering through the air as though the rain were their river. My breath caught in my throat. Rain snakes, I thought, the words echoing from the locals' warnings. At first I thought they were beautiful, otherworldly creatures born from the desert's hidden magic. But then one stopped. Its head turned toward me, or at least what I assumed was its head. Its form was amorphous, shifting in the rain like a mirage, but its gaze, or whatever it used to see, was unmistakable. I froze. The world around me seemed to blur, the pounding rain muting into a dull roar. The snake undulated closer, its scales, or droplets, or both, catching the faint light like shards of glass. I felt a strange sensation on my skin, not wetness, but something rough and dry, as though the rain had transformed into countless tiny scales brushing against me. The snake hovered inches from my face, its body pulsed faintly, a rhythm that matched the pounding of my heart. I couldn't move, couldn't think, and then it hissed. Not a sound, but a vibration, a resonance that traveled through the rain and into my chest. It wasn't words, but I understood it all the same. You are not welcome. The others began to circle, their forms weaving through the rain like specters. The air grew heavy, charged with an energy that made my skin prickle. I stumbled backward, my boots sinking into the damp sand. I didn't mean to intrude, I stammered, unsure if they could understand me. The lead snake, the one who had stared me down, tilted its head, and for a moment, I thought I saw something human in its movement. A strange intelligence, ancient and alien, that made my blood run cold. The snakes began to close in, their bodies weaving an intricate dance through the rain. The sound of their movement grew louder, a cacophony of rustling leaves and rushing water. Panic surged through me, and I turned and ran. The desert was unforgiving, underfoot, the sand slick with rain. But fear propelled me forward. I didn't dare look back, though I could feel them behind me, their presence pressing against my mind like a weight. The storm seemed endless, the rain blinding and relentless. My lungs burned, my legs screamed, but I kept going until I stumbled upon a rocky outcrop, a small shelter against the storm. I collapsed beneath it, gasping for breath, the rain snakes nowhere to be seen. But the rain itself seemed to mock me, its drops heavier and sharper, as though reminding me they could find me again if they wished. The storm passed as quickly as it had come, leaving the desert eerily quiet. The locals found me the next day, shaken and soaked to the bone. They didn't ask what had happened. They didn't need to. "You saw them, didn't you?" one of them asked, their voice low and reverent. I nodded, unable to speak. They didn't scold me or call me foolish. Instead, they handed me a charm, an intricately carved piece of bone tied with leather. "For protection," they said. "Next time, they might not let you go." I never returned to the Kalahari. The charm sits on my desk, a constant reminder of what I saw, of the things that live beyond our understanding. Sometimes when it rains, I catch a glimpse of movement in the drops, a shimmer of translucent scales that makes my chest tighten. I tell myself it's just a trick of the light, but deep down, I know better. The rain snakes are real. The Congo rainforest was unlike any place I had ever been. Its dense canopy was a ceiling of endless green, and its floor was a maze of roots, mud, and shadows. I had come on an expedition, driven by a restless curiosity and a love for the unknown. This place, the wild beating heart of Africa, was alive in a way that felt almost sentient. But the beauty of the forest was matched by its unpredictability. I had been hiking for days, guided by maps that were more suggestion than certainty. The air was heavy with moisture, and every breath carried the scent of damp earth and decaying leaves. A low rumble of thunder warned of an approaching storm, and I quickened my pace, searching for any sign of shelter. That's when I saw it. A village nestled in a small clearing, as if the rainforest itself had parted to make room. The village seemed untouched by time, its huts constructed of woven branches and topped with palm-thatched roofs. Smoke curled from a central fire, mingling with the mist that hung low over the ground. The villagers were gathered there, their faces turning toward me as I approached. They didn't seem surprised to see me, though I was certain I was far from any known trail. A woman with a kind face and a woven basket greeted me first, her voice soft and melodic. She spoke a dialect I didn't recognize, but her gestures were welcoming, and her smile put me at ease. They gave me food, sweet plantains roasted over the fire, and a woven mat to sit on. The children giggled as they watched me, hiding behind their mothers' skirts, and the elders nodded in quiet approval. The storm arrived soon after, heavy drops drumming against the leaves, but within the village it felt safe, almost serene. At first I thought I was imagining things. The villagers had been bustling around, tending to their fires and chatting in their soft, melodic voices. But as the rain grew heavier, I noticed fewer people by the fire. The children, who had been playing near the edge of the clearing, were gone. I looked around, puzzled. Perhaps they had retreated to their huts to escape the storm. But when I peeked into one of the huts, it was empty. The woman who had welcomed me was nowhere to be seen. The elders, the mothers, the laughter of the children, all gone. A chill ran down my spine. I told myself they were inside, avoiding the storm, but the silence was deafening. Only the rain remained, a relentless percussion that seemed to grow louder with each passing minute. By nightfall, I was alone. The fire still crackled, as though someone had just tended to it, but the village was utterly deserted. The huts stood like silent sentinels, their doorways yawning dark and empty. I called out, my voice trembling, but the rain swallowed my words. A deep sense of unease settled over me. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. The forest, so alive with sounds of insects and distant animal calls, felt unnaturally quiet. Every shadow seemed to shift, every rustle a whisper of movement. I retreated to the hut they had offered me earlier, clutching my damp blanket tightly around my shoulders. Sleep was impossible. My mind raced with questions. Where had they gone? Why had they left without a word? When dawn broke, the rain had stopped. The forest was alive again, its symphony of sounds resuming as if nothing had happened. I stepped outside, hoping, praying that the villagers had returned. But the clearing was empty. The fire pit was cold, and the woven mats were gone. I walked through the village, my boots squelching in the mud. My heart pounded as I realized something even more unsettling. There were no footprints. Not a single trace of the villagers remained. The only marks in the mud were my own. Fresh, solitary prints that led from my hut to the fire pit and back. It was as if the village had never existed. Desperation drove me deeper into the forest. I searched for hours, calling out until my voice was hoarse. I found no trails, no signs of life. The forest seemed to close in around me, its shadows darker, its silence heavier. I stumbled upon a small river and knelt to drink, my reflection rippling in the water. That's when I noticed something strange. My face, pale and gaunt, looked back at me, but behind it, the outline of a hut flickered for a moment before fading. Was it a memory? A mirage? The forest offered no answers, only the quiet mockery of its eternal rhythm. As I sat by the river, exhausted and defeated, a single thought came to me, unbidden and chilling. The village had appeared with the rain. Perhaps it was never meant to remain once the storm passed. Had I trespassed into a place that wasn't meant for me? A place that existed only in the fleeting moments when the heavens opened and the earth drank? Or had the villagers vanished because of me? Because I didn't belong? I eventually found my way back to civilization, though the journey is a blur in my memory. When I told my story, the locals listened in solemn silence. "You found the rain village," one of them said at last, his voice tinged with both awe and fear. "It appears only for those who are lost, but it does not stay." I asked what it was, who the villagers were, but no one had an answer. Some said spirits, others a trick of the forest, but one elder shook his head. "Not everything has a name," he said. "Some things simply are." I think of that village often, especially when it rains. The memory is vivid, too vivid to dismiss as a dream or a hallucination. Sometimes, when the storm clouds gather and the rain drums steadily against the windows, I close my eyes and am back in that clearing. I can hear the crackling of the fire, the laughter of the children, and the melodic voices of the villagers. I can see their kind faces and the way they moved like a rhythm in harmony with the storm. But then I remember the silence, the deafening void when they were gone, the eerie stillness of the forest, and the solitary imprint of my own existence in the mud. It's during those moments of recollection that the rain feels heavier, as though it's trying to whisper something I can't quite catch. I've stopped trying to explain it to others. The looks of disbelief, the half-hearted smiles, and the murmurs of stress or isolation-induced hallucinations have grown tiresome. What I experienced is beyond their understanding, and perhaps even mine. The rain village found me when I was lost. Physically, yes, but perhaps also in a way I hadn't acknowledged until then. There's a part of me that wonders if it was a gift, a glimpse into a world that exists only at the fringes of ours. And yet, there's another part that knows it wasn't meant for me. It was an anomaly, a fleeting sanctuary, and I was an intruder. I no longer hike deep into forests, no longer seek the unknown with reckless curiosity. I've traded the thrill of discovery for the comfort of the familiar, the safety of places where shadows don't whisper and rain doesn't feel alive. But sometimes, on nights when the storm rages and the world outside is swallowed by darkness, I feel a pull, a strange yearning to step outside, to walk into the rain, and to let it take me where it will. But I know better than to search for it again.